The stakes have never been higher. The competition has never been stronger. 42 drivers, 25 rounds. One will be crowned champion. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. Tune in Wednesday nights on the iRacing Esports Network to watch the cars and stars of Lionheart, the Lionheart IndyCar Series presented by First Medical Equipment.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
NASCAR describes Bristol as flying a fighter jet in a gymnasium. F1 describes Monaco as piloting a helicopter in your living room. For the Grand Prix legends, tossing these cars on Tsukuba is possibly this series' equivalent to that madness. A wonderful mismatch of horsepower and racing style, this Japanese track tends to host motorcycles and tuner cars in the real world. Will it be a heap of fun or a pile of frustration? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 2 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Johan Vanabel. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Johan, I'm rather excited to see what this combination produces today.
Absolutely, Joe. Tsukuba is one of the newest tracks on iRacing, and with that, an unknown variable for basically all drivers today. Now, the track is located 40 kilometers from Tokyo and was completed all the way back in 1970. The venue boasts 2 different courses, a small and twisty 1000 track and a bigger 2000 version, and on the latter one, we'll see the Lotus 49 today. The most races here at Tsukuba are time attack competition events, a racing category that's extremely popular in Japan. And while these tuner cars feel like a fish in the water at Tsukuba, like you mentioned, Joe, I doubt that the Lotus will, because with a longest straight of less than 500 meters, these cars barely get any leg room to put the throttle down. At the same time, 4 hairpins are waiting to catch a driver out and punish any mistake they make. The race today will really allow drivers to show their skill, as being smooth, being consistent and being good in traffic will pay dividends. At the same time, qualifying will be essential here at Tsukuba, and to see how a good quali lap looks like, let's hop on board the GSRC Lotus 49 as we take you for a lap around the track.
Alright, we're in the GSRC Lotus 49, so let's do a lap around Tsukuba. Down into turn 1, you'll probably see some pass attempts because all of the other hairpins have a compromised entry. You'll have to wait patiently to find the power so as not to spin the wheels too much, and then before you know it, you'll be weaving your way through 3 and 4. It's really tough to get the car settled while also getting the most out of the braking for the hairpin of 5. There's a fair bit of banking here, but it's still going to feel achingly slow. You won't always be able to track out fully because immediately you've got to switch sides for 7. It's a rare medium speed corner and it'll be important to learn how to carry your speed through here. After that, you'll just have to feather the throttle on the approach to 10. Once again, it's got a really awkward braking zone, but it might be slightly more feasible to go on the attack into this corner. However, this will be an important one to avoid getting a bad exit. The run from here to 12 is the longest straight of the track. Unlike most cars, you do need to slow up a fair bit for this last corner, so passes might be a slightly more common sight. It's a very late apex in this sweeping bend, but hopefully, if you've kept it all together, you've now finished a lap around Tsukuba. Sub 1 minute lap times that drivers are going to be doing around here. They absolutely whip around this course. Now, let's take a look at the championship since we've got one round under our belts. And since Mick Claridge won last week, of course, he is at the top of the points. Rob Olenek got himself a second place with Roman Pawlowski rounding out the podium. Take a look at that. Marco Kika in the top 5 in the points, and Bruce Nelson with a good run as well. So it should be an interesting season. Duden Jan, I believe, is he actually here today? Looks like he is not, so Mick Claridge could have another run of it. We'll find out. In the meantime, let's take a look at the F2 Driver Championships, the amateur level.
Yeah, and that one was also very exciting the last time around in Watkins Glen. No Rossi this season, however. The leader in that championship is Hideki Confisto. He won that race. He's leading the F2 championship with 22 points behind him. Michael Wren had a good debut race, 4 points behind him. 2 Americans, Marcellus Browning and Don Good, famous names from the GSRC Lotus 49 championship. They are fighting for the final podium position. Manach Stefan is also in the top 5 in the Formula 2 championship.
We also keep track of a Constructors' Championship for this series, so taking a look at that is actually called a Nations Cup because back in the 60s they did Constructors by country instead of by just their teams. The UK obviously leading. The U.S. seems to have spread their flag over to Germany in an odd twist. Pawlowski down there contributing points in 3rd place. Finland for Kika. I keep talking about them needing to make a bigger presence, and I think they've been doing fairly well lately. They're starting off the top 4 here. Italy joining them down in 5th. Let's take a look at the race details. Johan, I imagine there's going to be a lot of laps around here today.
Absolutely. Quickly, this is round 2 of the Lotus 49 Championship. 2 drop weeks this season means the 2 worst results of all the drivers will be removed. A lot of laps, absolutely. 38 laps here at Tsukuba with open setups and points that pay out to 25th position.
And if you enjoy watching the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends series, you can, as always, catch it here on the iRacing Esports Network. The best way to do that is to make sure and subscribe to IESN. All you got to do is click the big red button that says subscribe, and then you'll catch not only the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends, but the Camel GT series if you enjoy this retro racing, and all the official World Championships of iRacing here on IESN. Qualifying taking place, but most drivers have already got their 2 laps in. I see Gary Teal just getting ready to finish his 2nd lap. He sits down in 9th. That's a little low for him. His 2nd lap is faster, a 52.8, and that bumps him all the way up to 4th. That's a little bit more representative for Gary.
Yeah, he recovers completely with that. Big upset, however, is that Mick Claridge is not leading the pack at the moment. As we're looking at Colin at the moment, who's down in P14. Mick Claridge with a 52.3 was 1.5 tenths slower than Rob Olenek. Now, Rob, last week at Watkins Glen, was one of the drivers that was doing very well in qualifying as well. He couldn't seal the deal on the race, but getting qualifying a good qualifying result here, Joe, and getting pole position, that's really one step that you need to grab the victory. It will be so difficult to overtake.
This will be fascinating to watch. I'm trying to remember if Rob has had a victory before in this series. I feel like he may have. He's certainly shown up and shown quite a bit of speed, which is impressive considering he's come over from the Camel cars, where the Nissan doesn't exactly race like this Lotus 49. Qualifying, in the meantime, has already finished, so let's go through the starting grid. Rob Olenek, as we mentioned, on the pole with Mick Claridge in second, then row 2 starting with Ove Tranger on the inside. Gary Teal will start 4th next to him. Matt Wright on row 3 in P5 with Bruce Nelson starting 6th. Ian Haycock will be P7 and Mark Kika 8th. Then it is Hugh Haycock starting 9th, followed by Daniel Sadro rounding out the top 10.
Just outside of it is Francisco Javier Gutierrez in P11. He shares row 6 with Terry Worf. Michael Reinhardt, a new name, he starts the race in P13 just in front of Colin Cocker. Christopher Blackmore starts the race in P15 just in front of Jasmine Beach. The last driver with a timed lap in qualifying is David Sanchez. And the last driver on the grid didn't set a qualifying time. That position belongs to Wesley Johnson. He will start in P18.
And we are doing a rolling start in this series. Will be slightly different, but it's actually a very short rolling start in this series. You can see they start on the backstretch coming towards turn 12 behind the Porsche pace car. Just waiting for the rest of the drivers to grid up. Then we can go racing for 38 laps. Looking back from outside of the Porsche, the car of Rob Olenek getting a great opportunity potentially to steal a win over Mick Claridge. He is going to have to fight hard, almost a reversal of roles. It is typically Mick Claridge who is ahead of the likes of Michel Dudignon, trying to hold him back at certain tracks. Let's see if Rob can step into Mick's shoes and maybe play a defensive guard for as much of the race as possible. Or maybe he will just simply run away. Mick lurked a little bit quicker in the warm-up. That could be reversed here once they get to race pace. Just Wesley Johnson left to come out onto the grid, and now he's out there. So we take off, rolling behind the Porsche pace car, and immediately it will duck into the pit lane. Olenek has to wait patiently before getting the green flag to be able to pass the pace car. We've seen some black flags earlier this week. As it gets behind the pit wall, green flag is out here for round 2 in the Grand Prix Legends Series. A good start for Rob, but already a bit of a threat from Mick Claridge around the outside of turn 1. A little bit of contact behind them for 4th. That was Matt Wright and Gary Teal. Teal losing another position as Snelson trying to get by him. He's much better on the brakes down into 5, though.
What an amazingly courageous move from Gary Teal there. Bruce Nelson gets chucked up in the hairpin, has to completely cause a concertina effect. A lot of cars checked up because of that. Side by side for the next couple of corners, we have a spinner in the back. That's Francisco Javier Gutierrez. But all on the front, it is still Rob Olenek leading from Mick Claridge. That rolling start really helped him consolidate his lead. Mick Claridge couldn't find his way past. Ove Tranger is looking behind him to get the P2, P1 position.
Already he is very, very close behind Olenek, though. You can see putting immense pressure. And they've got Ove Trangrade staying right with him. In fact, it's about a 4-car breakaway for the moment. Matt Wright sitting in 4th before you get a first gap back to 5th.
One retiree, Christopher Blackmore, was one of the casualties in lap 1. He's out of the race. Colin Cocker, big crash in turn 1. Colin Cocker, Javier Gutierrez as well came together. As Colin got very loose in turn 1, Javier took too much speed there and two collided between each other.
Take a look at the replay. Gutierrez just a little bit too hot. He loses a position due to that incident to Sanchez. Watching Coker down in the first corner, just starts to lose it. The rear comes around. Probably thought he was clear. Unfortunately, just another driver making a mistake in the same corner. Wound up clattering them together.
The triangulate, as we go back live, we still see what happened with that incident on board from David Sanchez. You can see both of them colliding, trying to thread the needle immediately there, getting a few positions. Now up front, it's still the top three that we saw before, Rob, Nick and Overtrangulate. Overtrangulate is really pushing though, Joe. Last time around, as they came out of the final corner, the Norwegian was close to losing it with how wide he was going through that corner. He kept it on the grey stuff, however, barely. He can still follow behind him, Matt Wright. He cannot really follow suit. He's dropping farther and farther away. Gary Thiel as well, trying to drive away a little bit and succeeding from Bruce Nelson.
So we look back at that battle for 5th place. Bruce Nelson also being trailed by Marco Kika and Daniel Stadrill. In fact, I almost say you could say that Hugh Haycox and Ian Haycox are part of that train. Just a lot of cars very close together. Interesting that there hasn't been much spread here.
Yeah, you can see that like a lot of the cars are spreading out a little bit. They are not close together, as you can see moves happening very quickly, but they are close enough to pounce on a mistake if the driver in front just makes a mistake and loses a little bit of time. So you can see that at the moment Marco Kika, Cedro, both Haycoxes, they are just waiting to see what will happen in front of them and ready to pounce on any opportunity that they will get.
This is on board with I believe Ian Haycox, Hugh Haycox, excuse me. We got two of them here today. Still right up underneath Daniel Sadro. A little bit of braking here into turn 12. Now, I haven't actually raced on this track. I've only done laps here for our lap guide. Johan, do you think passes are possible? Because I feel like there's just enough braking that we couldn't see people attempt it, at least into turn 12.
That's probably the best place to make an overtake, yeah, but it's so difficult, mostly because it's not a direct corner. It has a very long radius, and that makes it only more and more difficult to actually make the pass there. If it was a small hairpin like you have on several other places in the track, it would have been way simpler because the braking would be harder. You have a bit of braking there, but I think it's too little to see an easy overtaking move there. It will just be very difficult to pass here, regardless of which corner you are. In the meantime, maybe we can go to P2 at the moment, because Mick Claridge, he's being reeled in by Overtrangulate as they come through the last corner. The Norwegian is right on his gearbox, though he loses 1 or 2 car lengths as they come out of the final corner. But Rob Olenek, he's creating a little gap to the 2 drivers behind him.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating that Mick seems to have dropped off a bit, as he is a whole 8/10 behind Rob Olenek. Not sure if maybe this is due to setup. It is pretty hot temperatures on the track, Johan.
Yeah, it's 39 degrees Celsius. You can see on screen 102 degrees Fahrenheit. That, of course, will mean that the tires will provide a little bit less grip. They will slide a bit more than the drivers might have anticipated in practice. It could be the weather, Joe, but one other thing that to keep in mind is Mick Claridge last week. He told us this season he didn't have that much time to practice as he normally would have. And you could see that in qualifying as well. While most drivers did their 2 laps and then went into the pits and maybe drink a little bit before the race started, Mick Claridge was one of the only drivers that just kept lapping and lapping his car, trying to get a feel of the track. And it seems like maybe he just needs to get a little moment before he can click in that rhythm and do the laps that he's capable of doing. At the moment though, Rob Olenek is driving slightly away from them, and Overtrangulate is trying to push more and more.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ove make an aggressive pass if it gets later in the race and he's...
Big crash between Marco Kika and Bruce Nelson. Bruce Nelson messed up one of the hairpins, got completely wide. Marco Kika tried to profit from that. Both their tires locked up in an exit of the hairpin. That sent the Finnish driver to the wall. We can see it here to a replay. Late move from Marco Kika, trying to go to the inside of the corner there, trying to make that pass on Bruce Nelson there on the exit. They just lock tires, sends Kika to the wall. Now he can still continue. I do think that he needs to make a pit stop to repair his car. Yeah, he actually goes to the pits, and I think that might be race over for Marco Kika.
Oh, that's a shame. He tried to track out when there was just no more room. Now, and we missed the pass. Ove's passed Mick. Where did this happen? Looks like an error from Mick in the final corner.
McLaren is extremely lucky there to not plant his car into the barriers there, because with the amount of speed that you approach that corner, you can just see him there losing control, under braking. I think he didn't touch the grass or something, it seemed like, just maybe too much speed, stepping on the brakes, and the car just snapped away from him there.
It was a nice save for sure. It was costly though, because he's already 1.8 seconds behind Ove. I'm pretty certain at this point that Mick was the bottleneck, because look at how close Ove has now gotten to Rob Olenek. I'm starting to feel that this number 5 car is the fastest one out on track.
It might well be it, yeah. Let's look at the lap times for the next few laps and see if the Norwegian is actually capable to close down the gap to Rob Olenek. Now, I don't want to jinx any driver here today, Joe, but if Rob Olenek wins this race, and if it finishes as it stands at the moment, I think that Rob Olenek will actually be leading as we leave Japan after this race. Now, it has been a while that we saw another driver leading the Lotus 49 Championship apart from Dudillon and McLaren, so this will be the first in several months that Rob Olenek will be leading the championship. He will be determined to stay in the P1 position, keep Ove Trangerade behind him. As they are driving, however, they're coming across a little bit of lap traffic. That's the pink car, the purple car of Jasmine Beach just in front of them, where the poor lap 1 is trying to recover from that, driving around to P15.
Pulls off to the right, and Jasmine lets the two of them through. And interesting that you bring up... Oh, Jasmine actually just gets into Mick! Lost control of the car and spun into Mick. No way for him to avoid it. So we're watching the replay now. Jasmine was being nice and polite, pulled out of the way, but just lost control of the car.
Yeah, just mispositioned herself. You can see the right-hand tire is going on the grass, on the curbstones, and when going back on the throttle, the car just spins out because it lacks the grip on the right side, and right in front of McLaren. We go to a replay from on board McLaren. There was nothing he could do. He saw the left car going out of his way, tried to send it to the inside, and was just collected on a passenger after they made contact.
Well, that will definitely hand the lead over to Olenek as long as he finishes the race, essentially, at this point. And I was about to say when that happened that it's interesting that you brought up who's led the championship between Mick and Michelle. Other than that, the only other major player that's led championship points is the car in second place, Ove Trangerade.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting to see if Ove Trangerade can close the gap. We mentioned it before. Last time around, there was literally nothing between the two drivers. In thousandths of a second, they were the same. This time, however, it is a 52.7 for Rob Olenek, a 52.5 for Ove Trangerade. It's 0.2 of a second advantage for the Norwegian. He's closing down the gap. Now, while we're looking at this battle, maybe put some emphasis on the driver in P3, Matt Wright. We haven't seen him a lot today, apart from his overtake lap 1, turn 1 on Gary Thiel. That overtake paid dividends for him because he started in P5. After everything that happened, he is now driving for a podium position, winning 2 positions. That's a very good result from Matt Wright, P3.
Right now, Gary Thiel 1.8 seconds back in 4th. Not sure if Thiel will be able to catch him, as right now Matt Wright's fastest lap is about a 10th faster than Gary's. Fastest lap of the race at the moment belongs to Ove Trangerade. So I was right a little bit earlier. He is the fastest car on track. Continues to try to reel in Rob Olenek, but it is slow going, about 7/10 between them.
Yeah, last time around, Ove Trangerade lost 0.2 of a second to Rob Olenek, so the advantage that he lost he gained last lap, he immediately lost. Now let's go to the battle for P8. That's the one between Terry Worth and Michael Reinhardt, 2 drivers that started a little bit in the back of the field, P12 and P13 respectively. They stayed out of trouble, winning 4 positions, both of them so far this race. And Terry Worth just on a very, very comfortable, very consistent drive here at Tsukuba. Keeping behind him Michael Reinhardt, not under a lot of pressure at the moment. He's able to just focus on his own laps, focus on his own rhythm. Just trying to get a very good, very strong top 10 result here.
We were talking about it before the race, this being a track that is included with your iRacing subscription. It means everybody owns it. And we've seen some new faces show up. Michael Reinhardt, one of those that I don't believe we've watched here in the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends before. Terry Worth as well. I don't think I've seen that name quite yet. Work their way around the final corner. Worth doing a good job, though, fending off the likes of Reinhardt, just keeping him at arm's length.
Another battle that might be fun to take a quick eye on is the one for P5. The battle is a little bit stretched out. It's between Daniel Cedro, Hugh Haycox in P6. Marco Kika behind them. He's not part in that battle. He's driving around P14, 2 laps down. He's back out on track. This battle for P5, however, is basically the culmination of a good race for Daniel Cedro. He started in P10, winning 5 positions in the progress. He really made some steps in the early parts of the race, Joe. Winning 5 positions so far, staying out of trouble. Now at the moment, the gap between himself and Hugh Haycox is slightly diminishing. Hugh is around 2/10 a lap quicker. At this track, we said it before, it's very hard to overtake. So even if Hugh is around 2/10 quicker per lap than Daniel Cedro is, it will be another story to actually make that overtake.
We've got a little bit of attrition here today. An 18-car field started the race and only 14 left driving. Even with what seems like a somewhat small number of 14 cars, I have to imagine traffic only going to become more and more of a headache as the leaders start to catch the tail of the field. They are coming up on 11th. That's Colin Coker soon. Rob Olenek going to be the first to reach him. He's got just about a straightaway to the next car.
Let's maybe go back to Rob Olenek for a second, because we were focusing on the battle between himself and Over Trangrate a few laps ago. That battle, look at the gap between the two, has grown to almost 2 seconds. That's not because Rob Olenek is suddenly a lot quicker. It's more that Over Trangrate is a lot slower now. The last 4 or 5 laps of the Norwegian have been very shabby, to say the least. Around half a second slower than he was before on average. He is now nearing the 53. He actually did a 53 last time around. That's costing him a lot of time.
Certainly is. Up to 2 seconds now. The number 5 car is seeing a chance at a win slip away. Rob Olenik's got to be feeling good. Question is, can he hold out up here in the lead? We haven't seen him in this position very often, at least here in the Lotus 49s. And I'm curious to see if he can hold it down, because he's still got half the race left to go to keep from making mistakes. And one little mistake, he's close enough to Ove that he could overtake him.
Absolutely, and you know, if overtraining the rate is 2 seconds behind you, you know that it's going to be a danger that he's going to launch an overtake before the end of the race anytime. But at the same time, Rob Olenek is one of the drivers that has been growing a lot in the Lotus 49. He's getting more and more consistent, more and more experienced. And I think that this would be a perfect culmination of that season's worth of experience that he's gathered so far to finally grab his first race victory here at Tsukuba of the season. He's doing at least a good job so far. The gap between him and Over Trangrate is starting to slightly decrease, but roughly stay the same. There's not a lot between them at the moment. The two of them are driving away, however, from Matt Wright. He's now around 10 seconds behind them in P3. Matt Wright, however, is being reeled in a little bit by Gary Thiel. Slowly but surely, a few tenths per lap.
You know, as we ride on board with Trangrate, I'm noticing something. Oh, as Olenek, we see, has a big slide up ahead of him. But Trangrate does as well, so it doesn't help him as much as he could. But that's sliding. We talked about the hot temperatures out on this track. I think a lot of people maybe assume, Johan, that this car is meant to slide, but I don't think they realize how much damage you can do. I wonder if that's why Ove is falling back, because he tends to be one that, let's say, slides more than other drivers.
But that was really evident in qualifying. I don't know if he actually caught that as he goes for a tremendous slide through the last corner there, laying down some really thick lines of rubber there in the last corner. Over Trangrate, after his qualifying laps, actually tried to complete the circuit several times, but just drifting around the corners. Now, I don't know if there was a way of just adapting to the temperatures and seeing how you can take the slides better, but he is for sure someone who slides a lot. That's really his driving style. Very aggressive, just throw it in the corners, see where it ends up, and then just full throttle again out of the corners. But with this temperature, your tires just heat up tremendously, and that will really reduce the amount of grip that you have. So it is almost more beneficial to just calm down, make sure that you don't push 100%, but maybe just drive 95% so you conserve your tires a bit more. At the moment, both P1 and P2 are still pushing very hard. You can see that with the amount of sliding that both drivers are doing. Again, Over Trangrate, big slide through the last corner though. It almost seems like that's really his preferred racing line through there. Looking at the gap between him and Rob Olenek, it's actually helping a little bit. He wins around a tenth in that final corner by sliding like that, even though that lap he was 2/10 slower than Rob Olenek in front.
We had another accident. Ian Haycox, in his eagerness to try and get by the lapped car of Christopher Blackmore, unfortunately spun the tires a little too much. You could see he's missing the nose of his Lotus. Basically, car just speared into, I don't know if these are hay bales or they styrofoam. I guess they're styrofoam.
It is a very weird incident what exactly happened between him and Blackmore. They were coming around the second hairpin. It almost looked like Christopher Blackmore in front just slowed down a little. Christopher Blackmore had a lot of damage. He was crabbing. He immediately parked his car and tried to go back to the pits as well. Now that lack of speed caught Ian Haycox out, and he had to step on the brakes, then lost controls and slung himself into the barriers. He is also sitting in the pits, so it seems like both day over for both Blackmore as for Ian Haycox. That means that several drivers are winning positions, like his namesake Hugh Haycox. That's a driver that we haven't mentioned a lot this race as well. He's up to P6 now. We have 3 positions in progress as we speak. He's getting by Colin Coker, the lap driver who's driving around a P11. But Hugh Haycox, he is driving around a P6 now. 2 seconds behind Daniel Cedro, trying to close down the gap to the driver in front of him. He is well in front of Terry Worth behind him in P7.
Worth, though, another climber this race. He started in 12th. I feel like most of these big position gains that we're seeing, though, are mostly due to just others' mistakes, which seem frequent, and it seems kind of silly, but for our viewers who haven't driven this car, Johan, I mean, describe the torque that this thing has and the difficulty in short courses.
It's almost indescribable. It is really a car that you have to experience. Every time you just step on the throttle of this car, it wants to break away. It gives you a sliver of grip, and that's all that you have to hang on to. It is really difficult to control this car, to keep it in a straight line, and then also, if you want to race with it, have to be quick, have to be smooth, have to be consistent. That combination just makes it a very tricky car to drive, but at the same time, oh so rewarding if you get it right. And that's why I think that you have a lot of regulars that just come back season after season in the Lotus 49, because yes, it is difficult, yes, it's just a hard car to drive, but when you do it right, when you get that combination of factors clicked in your muscle memory, and it works, and you can race with that, it's just such a joy to drive. At the moment though, we see one of the drivers you were mentioning, that a lot of drivers are gaining positions by just being consistent. Maybe we can put the camera for a moment on Marco Kika, who maybe deserves the Dory Award. He was, of course, involved in an accident at the beginning of the race. Now, he is one of the drivers that went into the pits, got some repairs, and then came out. He's 2 laps down, but since he came out, I think he already won 3 or 4 positions just by staying out there and not making any more mistakes, just slowly overtaking the people who did. He's up now to P12 overall, and I think that he has the speed to actually close David Sanchez down in front of him before the race is over.
He's about a second faster than Sanchez, and they've got 14 laps left. It might be a bit of a stretch for him to catch David, but depends on if David himself has to let lapping cars by, and if Marco can continue to pick up the pace now that he's returned. Speaking of pace, I'd like us to check back in on the leaders. Ove Trangrade stopped the bleeding. It's still hanging at about 2 seconds behind Olenek, and they are continuing to pull away from that right. It is a whole 11.5 seconds to the driver in third. So once again, Trangrade keeping Olenek honest, though just not in attacking position.
Yeah, and I think that Rob and Ove are really, well, basically at arms standoff at the moment. They're staying 2 seconds away from each other for basically the last 10-15 laps. The gap that is decreasing, however, is between Matt Wright and Gary Thiel. There's only 1.5 seconds between the two of them. I think as they're about to cross start-finish line, it's going to decrease even more. Gary Thiel is just slowly but surely closing down on the Australian in front of him. Looking as they come cross start-finish line, the gap has decreased to only 1.2 seconds. So Gary Thiel is coming, and he's looming larger and larger in the rearview mirror of Matt.
And Gary Thiel is definitely a veteran of this series. I'm really glad that he's come back to race once again. Matt Wright, I think at this point you could probably call Matt a veteran. Just not as many years in this car as Gary. Still, it'll be fascinating to see if Gary catches him, especially if it's late in the race, how aggressive and how he'll manage to try and overtake Matt if he can. Right on board with Gary for the moment.
Yeah, because that's of course one of the things we mentioned before. The tires are just having a difficult time with all the sliding that's going on, with the high temperature that's going on. If an experienced driver can just drive in such a way that he can cool his tires down a little bit more than someone who tries to get everything out of it at the beginning of the race, you will really see that advantage at this part with around 10 laps to go, where you just have cooler tires and you can drive quicker lap times. Gary Thiel decreasing the gap. It's now less than a second between himself and Matt Wright. I think that 2-3 laps from now he will be on the gearbox and trying to make a move. Now, making a move here, Joe, will be very difficult. We theorized a little bit where are good overtaking opportunities. I think the final corner is probably one of the better opportunities, or just tuck yourself in the gearbox in the final corner and try a lunge on the inside of turn 1.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, is since these cars don't really suffer from the aero wake that modern F1 cars do, you really could follow behind someone in that fast final corner and then try the heavy braking of the first hairpin, but we haven't seen much of that so far, so maybe this is just better in theory and a lot harder in practice as we continue to see Gary Thiel try to close in. It's now down to a second between himself and the number 9 of Matt Wright.
A lot of battles are closing in, however. We mentioned Matt Wright and Gary Thiel. That battle is closing. Rob Ollenek and over Rate 1.6 seconds between them, also closing. At the same time, Terry Worth and Michael Reinhardt are also only 1 second away from each other. That's the battle for P7. So a lot of cars are catching up to each other in the final 10 laps of this race.
We're seeing more traffic become a bit of I wouldn't say a problem, but definitely a concern for drivers. They had to go by Jasmine Beach, who dutifully stayed out of the way on the front stretch. Thankfully did not interrupt the fight as Reinhardt continues to chase Worth. Ooh, good exit off of 5 and 6. We're looking at Olenek here, our current leader in the race, who is led since the start from pole.
Yeah, but let's go to the battle for P7, because that's probably the closest one we have at the moment. Michael Reinhardt in his debut race, we think, coming out of the penultimate hairpin, around 3-4 car lengths behind Terry Worth. He was a lot closer in the infield section, but through the penultimate hairpin he lost a little bit of time in front of him. Terry Worth sliding a lot, losing a lot of time in the final corner. You can see Michael Reinhardt immediately closing down 2 car lengths. He's now right in the gearbox. He can make a lunge to the inside. Who's later under braking? Basically roughly the same, both of them taking different racing lines. You can see Terry Worth struggling there to keep the grip, keep the car in a straight line. Michael Reinhardt has to step on the brakes to avoid him. Cannot profit from that and bring it side by side, but it's safe to say that it seems like Michael Reinhardt is quicker at this point, Joe, and Terry Worth is maybe overdriving his car, losing a lot of time, but just sliding way too much.
He definitely looks like he's got him rattled as Worth continues to be a little bit offline in a number of places. Now he actually goes defensive down into the final hairpin. Reinhardt just stalking behind him, staying in those tire tracks in 8th place. Falls back a little bit. A good exit out of that final hairpin for Terry Worth. Saves him, but oh, he's hot once again into the final corner. I'm not sure if that's just his racing line. It's an unusual line, but it seemed to have worked okay.
But it's very difficult to, even if the car in front makes a mistake like that, to still have more momentum and try a lunge in turn 1. This time around in turn 1, Terry seems to be a lot smoother, and you can see that he doesn't lose as many car lengths. But again here in the second hairpin, it's the second hairpin here where he loses a lot of time, and in the final hairpin where he just slides too much. The rest of the track, Terry is kind of on par with Michael Reinhardt behind him. Michael has a good run there through the S's, good enough that he can take a look on the inside, and this must be frustrating for the DX driver as well, that you can just notice that you're a lot quicker, but you cannot find your way past.
Once again, up to that final corner. Let's see what line Terry uses this time. That looks a lot more traditional. So that is not the normal line those previous 2 laps. Terry seems to have calmed down, and that stretches him away from Reinhardt. Going up to 3rd, Gary Thiel has caught Wright.
Yeah, exactly. Less than half a second between them two at the moment. Less than 2 car lengths between the two. What a great racing line from Gary Thiel through the final corner. He pushes out a little bit too much at the end, a little bit too much understeer for him. That hurts him in his battle for turn 1, but Matt right in front of him. Way too wide through the first corner. This will give Gary Thiel a sliver of hope. He's really close as they reach the S's to the second chicane. 2 car lengths between the 2 drivers. Gary Thiel trying a wider line. Way more sharp in that corner, way more sharp on the apex, but it doesn't help him to put his car side by side. He is looking feisty, however, Gary Thiel. It looks like he's quicker, Joe.
When these laps go fast, it is now 8 to go. It didn't feel like that long ago. We said we're only halfway through. Off this final hairpin, Matt Wright trying to apply the power carefully as he moves it up through the gears. Lest you think these cars are slow. Up into this final corner, they get up to 140 miles an hour, and Matt Wright a little hot into there. Gary Thiel took a look. Now he's going to try and come off the corner stronger. Defensive move by Matt Wright. Thiel ducks to the inside, but just doesn't have the nose in. Goes back to the racing line. Tries to square off the corner, but can't get it off of there as strongly as the number 9 car.
Great defense from Matt Wright, also great attacking momentum from Gary Thiel. He tried to look on the inside, tried to sell the dummy there, go back to the outside, but he was just too little too late under braking there. He had to consolidate his position and set himself up for another move. Now, as they go through the infield section, you can see visually on screen that he's losing several car lengths to Matt Wright. I think he's a little bit too far to try and move this time around. As they go through the penultimate chicane at the moment, there's a little bit of traffic in front of them in the form of Ian Haycox and Colin. Let's see, that is Colin Coker. They're still 2-3 laps away from them. However, as they go through the final corner, again, different racing lines. You can see Gary Thiel really clubbering the curbstones while Matt Wright tries to avoid them with any means necessary as they reach turn 1. Under braking, Gary Thiel once again closing down around 1 car length as to get the car slowed down. Not close enough to try and move.
Credit to Matt Wright for being able to get this far when I'm sure he saw Gary Thiel coming slowly but surely with each lap. And now that he's there, he's certainly holding him at bay. He's got to do it for 6 more laps, actually more like 5 more laps at this point as they're close to the end of this one. Off the hairpin. Once again, Matt Wright looking incredibly smooth on the throttle, and that is preventing Gary Thiel from being able to have a go. Will this lap traffic have an effect on the battle as Thiel gets less than a car length behind now through the final corner? This is one of the closest we've seen, but just not close enough down the pit straight.
A little bit of lap traffic in front of them. That's Colin Coker. Let's see if he gets out of the way. And yes, as he gets out of the way. Little slide from Gary Thiel as he was obscured by the left car, I think, because Matt Wright was just behind him. Both of them avoided them. Now we don't have to go to it. In the meantime, Rob Olenek over Trangerate. That gap is staying around 2 seconds. So I don't think that we'll see a move from over Trangerate for the lead. But this battle, 4P3, is really heating up. Who will get the final podium position? Gary Thiel, like you said, Joe, he seems a lot quicker overall, especially under braking. He makes a difference compared to Matt Wright. But Matt Wright is quick where he needs to be. He's quick on all the exits. He's smooth enough to make sure that Gary Thiel cannot put his car side by side on the end of the straights. As to go through the final corner now, once again you can see the car of Gary Thiel just squirm a little bit as he touches the curbstones. Wins him around half a car length, but not enough to try and move here through turn 1. The car of Matt Wright throwing up a little bit of dust there. Doesn't hurt him, however. Gary Thiel has to stay behind him. Only 4 more laps to go, and Gary Thiel knows that he basically has 8 more opportunities, 7 more opportunities now to get by Matt Wright and get a podium position.
And if you're just joining us, this is the battle for third that we're watching between Wright and Thiel. We are in round 2 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends Series. This is the first time these drivers have taken to this track in this series. This season elects to take to Tsukuba, and it has put on a fascinating race, an unusual race for this series. They don't often come to circuits this tiny, with this few opportunities to pass. They're not afraid to attempt unusual combinations with this car, with it being a bit of a tighter-knit community, willing to try unique things. Be curious to see if they come back next season. 3 laps to go now and Gary Teal continuing to try and do all he can to overtake the likes of Matt Wright.
It almost seems visually like the gap between the two is growing at the moment. They're going through the penultimate chicane, going onto the back straight. This is of course the longest straight of the track, a little bit less than 500 meters, so a lot of leg room. The cars reach around 240 kilometers an hour as they reach the braking zone here. Matt Wright, every time, Joe, once they reach this corner, he just swings it wide, and that loses him a little bit of time. It is just enough to stay in front. Even racing lines here as well, as Matt Wright goes a little bit defensive every time, very close on the apex of the corner as Gary Teal breaks right up the gearbox of the car in front. Two of them avoid each other though with 2 more laps to go. It is difficult to say that Matt Wright will lose it. He just looks so strong defensively. He's not putting a foot or a wheel wrong.
At this point, I'm willing to say never, because Gary Teal's getting so close. I suspect he's going to take one last dive and try to make something happen. Now, Gary's going to try his best not to run into Matt Wright, but that's what it's essentially going to take, it looks like, is a bit of the chrome horn to move him out of the way, or just be phenomenal on the brakes. White flag is out. These drivers have fallen a long ways behind our leaders, so they're already well through the lap. Rob Olenek coming up to the final hairpin, still at about 1.5 seconds over Ove Trangerade. The Norwegian has run him down by a few tenths, but I think at this point it is more Olenek minding the gap. 1 corner to go. The number 2 car put it on pole. Rob Olenek off of the final corner is going to take the win here at Tsukuba for round 2.
Little slide from Rob Olenek there as well, celebrating his victory over Tranger, getting in P2. But let's go back to the battle for P3. Gary Teal still behind Matt Wright. They're coming up across some lap traffic in front of them. That's Ian Haycox and Jasmine Beats just in front of them. This will throw a wrench in the mix as Matt Wright has some defense. Gary Teal tries around the inside, cannot make it, and they almost go free right over the finish line. It is Matt Wright finishing in P3. Gary Teal has to settle for a position just outside of the podium.
And only 6 cars will finish on the lead lap just because of the nature of the short lap time. Hugh Haycox is going to be the last one in 6 to finish on that lead lap. That takes us to break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the official results as well as some driver interviews. On your screen, you're going to see all the upcoming races that you can find here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Tsukuba. It was an intense race for the lead, even though we didn't see many pass attempts. Rob Olenek had Ove Trangarade breathing down his neck the entire way. For a little while, it was Mick Claridge, but unfortunately, lap traffic just had an error in front of him, took him out early on. You can see first for Rob, second for Ove, third for Matt Wright, who himself had a nice battle with Gary Teal. Teal was within 0.2 of a second for much of this race, but unfortunately could not find a way to get by. Teal has to settle for fourth. Daniel Sadro, nice quiet run to fifth from 10th on the grid. Hugh Haycox taking sixth behind him. Terry Worth as well, climbing from 12th to 7th, the first driver to be lapped in this race. Michael Reinhardt was trying to get by Terry, but he only finishes in 8th today. Then 9th goes to Francisco Gutierrez, and Colin Coker winds up 10th.
Michael Kika is the one winning the Dory Award today. After his crash at the beginning of the race, he continues and actually finishes the race P11, 2 laps down of the rest. Jasmine Beach finishes 5 laps down just in front of David Sanchez, who retired a few laps before the end. Then we have a bunch of retirees that, saw some misfortune early in the way. Ian Haycox retired, finishes in P14. Mick Claridge, the unfortunate victim of that car spinning just in front of him, classified in 15th place, so probably a drop week for Mick today. Bruce Nelson classified P16. Christopher Blackmore just behind him, and Wesley Johnson didn't see the green. He is classified in P18.
We've got Daniel Sadro ready to talk to us from that top 5 finish. Let's bring him into the booth and see what his perspective is. He fell off a little bit from Gary Teal late in the race, but still coming from 10th on the grid up to 5th. Daniel, that's got to feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah. As a result, I'm really, really pleased. I kind of stuffed up qualifying, and I should have been a little bit farther up, but kind of just had some fortunate turn 1 where I got around the Haycoxes, and then just had a couple people fall off in front of me, and then I just kept it on the pavement, and that ended at 5th place.
We had some pretty hot conditions, at least on the track surface. The air seemed to be pretty good for the virtual fans, but this didn't seem like a good combination for hot conditions out there, because a lot of drivers looked like they were slipping and sliding around. What did it feel like for you?
Oh, definitely. I had to make a couple setup adjustments to just make my car a little bit less slippy. And I had to really, really watch my acceleration, and especially my braking. It just had to do that to keep going.
Well, we were kind of talking about whether or not we'll see this return on the schedule. What's your vote as a driver now that you've experienced it in race conditions?
Oh, well, it's kind of a lot like Lime Rock Park without the hill. It's very narrow. It's very short, so you have a lot of traffic. And I should say that the traffic, for the most part, just was they tried so hard to stay out of our way, and I really appreciate it. I think it's important that we run different tracks, and having something like this along with something like Le Mans it's great to have that sort of variety. So I'm in favor of it coming back.
All right, we get a yes from Daniel Sadro. Congratulations on a top 5, and we hope to see you next week.
All right, thanks. See you guys.
Up next, Johan's caught up with our winner. We need to figure out if this is the first win on broadcast for Rob, as Johan checks it out.
It is.
Yeah, congratulations. We were wondering that so much in the race, but it is your first win in the Lotus 49, right?
On a broadcast, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations with that. What a race it was, however. You grabbed pole position, of course, in qualifying. Was that like the ingredients to win the race here? Was it essential to win, getting the pole position?
I think so. If you can get the pole and then not make any big mistakes, it's really, really hard to get by. So I knew Mick would go hard in the beginning. Luckily, he didn't get by me. I honestly think the rolling start helped a lot, because he probably, upped his pressures like he normally does if he doesn't get pole, and he was going to take off. But I got lucky.
You got you got P1 in turn one, and you didn't lose it after that. Now, of course, Mick had his problems during the race, and you were basically threatened for the rest of it by Overtrangulate. You finished 2 seconds in front of him at the end, but that gap wasn't 2 seconds the whole race. It basically was a yo-yo between less than 1 second to 2.5 seconds. What actually caused that? Was it the temperature that just warmed up the tires too much? Was it traffic playing a factor in that? What caused it to fluctuate that much?
I think it's just really hard to be consistent here. So I think it was just minor mistakes by Ove and me that would make it go, up and down a little bit. And I think overall we're just the same exact pace. So it was, just I'd make a little error, get a bad exit. He'd catch me a little, and then vice versa. The traffic was interesting. It doesn't seem like it really affected either of us much. I didn't think it did. They were really great. I mean, everybody was really good with traffic, and I don't think it slowed us up at all.
We just had Daniel Cedra in the booth. Joe asked him if he liked Tsukuba. He got a yes vote from that. I wanted to ask you the same question. You have one race in the Lotus 49 now at Tsukuba. Is this a track that you would like to see again next season, or is it something I prefer other tracks, longer ones like Brands Hatch next week?
I like it. I don't know what it is about the track. I like it. A lot of concentration on this track, which I like. There's not much, and a lot of errors can be made. So it really is going to come down to who can mentally, keep it together the best. So I like that kind of track.
Well done. Well, mental victory for sure. Congratulations, Rob, with your victory. Go enjoy the champagne. You've earned it.
Thank you. See you guys later.
That was Rob Allenek speaking with us, our pole sitter and victor here at Tsukuba, and the leader in the championship going away from Japan.
And it's going to close up our broadcast. So we are going to thank, of course, the Lotus 49 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage. And a thank you to iRacing for putting us on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure to subscribe that you don't miss a moment here on IESN. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to Junior Lalonde, who provide our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Johan, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you head on over to our YouTube page for GSRC, you can make sure and subscribe to our channel as well. We have lots of great racing action coming up all weekend and all week long. The next race for this series is going to be Brands Hatch, as was mentioned. That'll be Saturday, March 30th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. See you on the track.